Hmm. Okay. I think I need to turn my volume down a little bit. All right. Peace, Supreme. Yo, how's my volume? My volume decent. Peace, Joy. Love you. I just wanted to come on for a bit, y'all, and just talk about some 2022 insights and highlights. Those of you who are in tune with me, who check out like my social media pages, throughout the year, I've consistently shared various different projects, programs, and initiatives that I've been involved in. And I just published a article that I usually do at the top of the Gregorian calendar year, just sharing some advice for everyone who's striving to accomplish different goals throughout the course of the year. And some of the advice that I'm sharing are things that I've consistently done over the years that have enabled me to be successful in my undertakings without fail. So I'm talking about sticking consistently to what it is that I've shared. There is virtually no way to fail at meeting certain goals unless you're dealing with some type of extenuating circumstances and inclement weather. But in terms of being self-directed and determining the path for yourself, there's certain things that I've shared that are important elements of any kind of successful undertaking. If you're connected with me on Facebook, I pinned it on my Facebook page. So go over there and take a moment and check it out when you get a chance. It's some good insight that I've shared in regards to just being successful in our undertakings. Um, Usually, when it comes around this time of the year, there's oftentimes a lot of debate from different people about, well, it's not really the new year. The new year really starts in the spring. And, it's always that type of back and forth, you know? And I could understand and appreciate the fact that a new year doesn't, you know, literally start in the middle of the night, or a day doesn't start in the middle of a night, in the middle of the winter time. I could understand that, you know? And I could understand also that we talk about the spring and life springing up, that is an indication naturally of a new year, right? But I think regardless of where we mark our new year, if you mark your new year on your born day, if you're born on April 14th and you say that that is my new year, and you measure 365 days from April 14th, and that's how you see it, then I think the ultimate goal is, what are you actually doing in 365 days? I don't care where we say our new year starts. Um, it could be January 1st, it could be March 20th, it could be any day. But the most important thing is, how are we measuring and quantifying our growth and development and our service to others for 365 days? Because I see people who, they're heavy on them. My new year starts on March 20th, but for 365 days, they don't do shit. They don't do nothing for 365 days, but they heavy on my new year starts on March 20th. But then at the same time, I see people who set their new years to start today, January 1st. They may not do shit for 365 days. So to me, talk really don't mean nothing. Even with me sharing podcasts and doing these lives, my talk don't really mean nothing. What really means something is, does your words and do my words line up with what it is that I actually do? Are these words an indicator of my actions? So even me being on here talking, this don't matter. You should be able to go back and fact find what it is that I'm talking about. If I'm saying that this is something that I've been involved in or I've been invested in, or this is a project, program, and initiative, or you should be able to find evidence of that. It shouldn't be hard. It should not be hard at all. If I'm on here talking like I'm an expert, and usually if I'm speaking about a subject, I've wrote a book on the subject. So that's what's a little different between me and some other people that get on here trying to be intellectuals and scientists and philosophers and stuff. I can literally say, if I'm going to sit here and talk about the occult or about secret societies, or I'm going to be talking about this, that, and the third, I can literally direct you to a book that I wrote about the subject that's right now in a, a curatorial archive in the British Library. So I can refer you to stuff that I've wrote on that actual subject. So I don't just get on here and just talk. You know what I'm saying? Uh, so resolutions are really about a person setting their own standards in terms of goals that they're striving to achieve. And regardless of what it is that we say, the evidence is really in our actions. So when I look back over 2022, there's a lot of things that I've been able to successfully do, and I don't really mark or start my year with a resolution and say I'm going to do this throughout the course of the year. I just do it all throughout the year. It don't matter when I start. My lines blur. How often do you do live question and answers? I don't know. In terms of like putting it in the heading, question and answers live, I rarely do that, Toby. But when people ask questions, I oftentimes respond to them. Or if people email me, I respond to them, you know? Uh, Peace out. Yeah. But, I'm a person that's all about action. I'm all about rolling your sleeves up, getting the work done, and there's not a lot of glory in that oftentimes. And that's the type of work that people are not necessarily interested in. I was watching an interview recently with Deion Sanders, and Deion Sanders is he's like my spirit animal. I relate with him so much. I just don't talk shit like him. But in terms of his level of confidence and esteem and what he sets out to do, his ability to make things manifest, 100%. And in this interview, he was talking about how the interviewer asked him about his greatest highlights. And he was like, my greatest highlights have never been seen. My greatest highlights, and I'm paraphrasing this, my greatest highlights have happened on a practice field. And in those solitary or quiet moments when no one's looking, that's when I had my greatest highlights, not what you think you see. And I can understand that. I can definitely understand that, because a lot of the work that I do, I may not tell everybody everything. The only reason why I do show some of the things that I do, is to not only to keep an accurate public record, but to also demonstrate the capacity to be able to be an everyday person doing various different type of things in your community, and to inspire people to do things like that. You know, that's the reason that I did it. And I really had to reconcile that in my mind for a while, because On one hand, you may have people thinking that you showing off and you trying to be all self-important and all of this other bullshit, but it's like, how do people know their capacity to do certain things? Or you're showing them step by step how you're able to accomplish things, and you're making yourself available to people who are truly invested in striving to do something themselves. How can you demonstrate that without showing people something? So I really had to learn to reconcile that over the years, where I had to become comfortable with just talking about what I do. Even to this day, if I come in contact with an everyday person and they ask me, "Hey, what's been going on? What you up to?" I I don't go into, "Yeah, I was just at the United Nations." Yeah, I was just, down at the United Nations and I was speaking, and oh yeah, I just wrapped up filming this documentary, and uh, just I don't have those type of conversations with people because a lot of times those type of conversations are kind of far out for, the everyday person that's just going to work every day. Or and I do a lot of the exact same things, but there's other different things that I also do as well, and I don't get in those type of conversations a lot. A person really has to engage me for me to be specific about things that I do that are usually outside of the peripheral vision of everyday people. So, and then sometimes people get mad at me and shit. you know, they'll talk to me and then they find out somewhere else, like, this dude published 23 damn books. And they come and confront me about it, like mad that I didn't tell them that shit. But it's like I don't walk around or put up poster signs or things to let people know, hey, I do all of this. The real goal is, how can I show people to be successful in their own undertakings? Because I've learned a formula, and the work that I've done, that I've been invested in, it shows and proves that I know what the hell I'm doing. And if people are committed and dedicated enough and disciplined enough, I can literally show you step by step how to accomplish certain goals. So the evidence of your work speaks for itself. And in saying that, this is one thing that I learned this year. There's a number of things that I'm always learning, but I really came to an epiphany recently. And there are people, I say, over the last few years that I don't even talk to at all anymore. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I mean, initially I might have been upset or hurt, but these are people that I have no conversation with at all, that I've been able to just, they don't even exist in my world at all. And I realize that one thing that all of these people, and it's not like it's the number of a carton of eggs or nothing. It ain't that many people, but I'm just saying, one thing that all of these people had in common is, number one, they questioned my integrity and accused me of doing something in regards to striving to take advantage of them or to get something from them. Now, these are not people that I don't interact with. These are not people that you just meet online and you've never really had a face-to-face conversation with, or people that didn't walk with you. These are people who personally knew me and personally on many occasions benefited from the type of service that I share with people. Right. So for me to be questioned about my integrity, or that I actually want something from somebody, or I'm striving to get something from somebody, that really offended me. really offended me, because these are people who see maybe more than others the type of sacrifice that I make and my willingness to commit to being of service to other people. They may have seen that more than other people. So I mean, I can understand that some people who really don't personally know me, they could have a lot of different ideas about what they think I am and what they think I'm not, or they can have a lot of those ideas because they personally don't know me. I'm talking about people who've been around me, people who've been around me, who see how I move and know all of what I give and sacrifice for others and put others before any of my needs. For them to question like me trying to do something to them, oh yo, I learned like n- it's not that I have zero tolerance for that. I have negative negative tolerance for people who don't see me in that way, who are supposed to be close to me. And I don't do a bunch of explaining. You know, I strive to share my perspective of things to give an understanding so that people have some sense of clarity. And I do it only once. I don't do it over and over again. I don't try to constantly explain myself or what I'm doing, what I'm not doing. I don't do all of that, because the evidence of my works and the time that I invest is enough explanation of who I actually am. And if a person accuses me of doing something today, then you should be able to bring up a number of incidents or a number of examples of how I've consistently behaved in that type of way. It shouldn't be something that I've been doing this for 15, 20 years and then all of a sudden I just do this. You should have evidence to document like, yo, you've always been like this. You've always been taking advantage of people. You always been putting your hands on women. You always been doing this. You always been doing that. It should be evidence of that. So when I've encountered that experience with people, I cut it off immediately. And initially I would be hurt. Like why would they even, I can't understand why they would even behave like that. And then that hurt would turn to anger because then I get mad. Like this person actually has the delusional audacity to believe that I would even want something from them. They would actually believe that. So that anger would be rooted in me just looking at people like, yo, you are very delusional about who you think you are. And that's one reason why I just cut it, because I'm like, I was basically here for you and to support you and the things that you're doing, and even strive to create opportunities for you because I believe in and I support your vision and where it is you're striving to go. And I know that I have certain skill sets and things that I could actually offer, and that's how it will come to people. But when I've experienced that, I'm like, yo, I cut it immediately. And I realize that about myself. I have zero tolerance, negative or less than zero tolerance for people who would question my integrity and the things that I'm doing. I mean, even in a professional space, I work with youth, and you have to have a certain level of integrity just to be able to work with youth in a professional way. And that's one thing that I also learned, once I got my official license to open the Atlantis School for Gifted Youngsters. Since that time, I've been putting together like my policy manual for parents and guardians so they know what the expectations are for me and what my expectations are for them, the contract for parents and guardians, other different paperwork that I've been making sure that I put together before I actually open the doors. Matter of fact, next week I'm having the first official virtual open house for the Atlantis School. And I'm going to be putting out the link for people to register so they can learn a lot more about our story, about our mission, about the policy and procedure manual that I put together, the contracts, and also the residency program that I established for people around the world who are interested in adding on their skills to the Atlantis School for Gifted Youngsters. Now, when I put out the information about the residency program, I made it very clear what it is about. It's not cumbersome, it's not a whole bunch of red tape. It is very clear and direct of what the expectations are. And basically, I'm creating an opportunity for people to be able to function in a communal space, to be able to share their gifts with gifted youngsters or with children. No, Joy, you can still sign up. I actually pushed back the date from yesterday to the end of February. So yeah, so the way that that residency program operates is people will be able to submit for it, and an important part of people applying for this residency program is also to submit a current police background check, because I'm not having nobody around, no children who got one foot in the street or who got stuff on their criminal background record that is not appropriate for them to be around children. So that is critically important in terms of applying for this residency program. So now, other than that, a person don't got to be credentialed and have a doctorate degree and all this other stuff. If you're a person that is an extreme couponer, or you know how to find deals, and when you go shopping, what is best, in terms of purchasing things here as opposed to there. If you have a skill at doing that and you're very frugal and you understand the most efficient way in order for you to get clothing as well as food, that is a skill that children need to learn in terms of budgeting and financial planning. That is an important skill to have. Most children are not learning skills like that in school. So that's something that I would like to be able to offer to children. Like, this person knows how to go to the store and successfully stretch $100. So that is a person that I would love to have to be able to share their skills with youth here in my city. So I created this residency program where if a person does not live in Western New York or the Southern Ontario area, where they don't have like easy access to my school, and they're from another state or another country, I created it so that minimally twice a year, that person has the free range to come to my city. I will provide accommodations for them, meaning I will provide stay for them for 3 days, as well as food, and I will pay them to be able to do a workshop for students here while they're here visiting my city. So there's literally nothing that you have to do. I mean, you have to find a way to get here, right? And if a person gets selected by my board for that first cohort of the residency program of 2023, then they would just let me know in advance what 3 days of the year or 6 days, because it'll be broken up into two different times, that they're coming to visit the city, so that I can make sure that I have accommodations for them once they get here. And they can bring their family too. And the only requirement of them is to apply for it through my Google Doc that I established online. And then also for them to submit their information, such as a police background check, which is not difficult, and to give me an idea of being able to put together some type of program that they're interested in sharing. And I'm going to pay them to do it. So people can come to the city. I'm going to put them up so that they don't have to look for no accommodations or stay nowhere. I'm going to feed them, so they would have to let me know like what their, food allergies are or what type of diet that they share. And I'm going to pay them to be able to do a minimal hour workshop while they're here. That's simple. That's simple. Because I know personally, with the things that I'll be teaching the students in my school, there are certain worlds that I'm not the Lord of. And that there's various different people that have different type of skill sets that are important to be able to share with the youth. One of my brothers, he lives down in Atlanta, and he's a skateboarder. So I already told him, like, when you and your queen want to come up and visit, I already got you. I got food for y'all. Just let me know when you're striving to get up here, and then I can make sure that I put it on the calendar so that youth will have access to be able to learn from you, and you could teach them some of the fundamentals of skateboarding because we have a skate park here. So I'm creating a communal environment in the same way that if you're familiar with the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters and the X-Men, he would utilize his space as a training or a frontistery, a place of study and thinking. And the elder mutants would be mentors or teachers to the younger mutants. So they would be going out and, along with Professor Xavier, identifying these mutants who are growing up in a society where they're learning about their abilities and their powers, but they're not necessarily in an environment that is cultivating those skill sets and helping them gain a sense of purpose and identity within those powers. It's the exact same thing, and it's parallel to the children that are growing up in our society. All of our children have gifts in some capacity, all of them. But oftentimes they're not growing up in learning environments or even in home environments where parents and guardians or educators or adults, period, recognize those skills, and they're striving to set them on that trajectory of growth and development where they're able to live a purposeful life. Because a lot of times some of the parents, the guardians, and adults, they're not living a purposeful life. So how are they going to show others? So that's really the vision and the goal behind establishing the Atlantis School for Gifted Youngsters, to not only make this as a safe space for development of children's purpose and setting them on that trajectory, but also to create it as a way for others who are a part of my network to be able to share their gifts with these gifted youngsters. Now, it seems simple, it seems straightforward, but here I go, having people engage me who are uncomfortable with submitting a police background check or trying to go all the way around the world instead of just doing exactly as I told you you needed to do. Apply for it through the Google Doc. That's simple. You ain't got to do everything else. I'm not making any kind of modifications or anything to it. Do exactly as I put it out there for people to be able to follow. It's just that simple. I've put a lot of thought into this and I've been doing this for quite some time. So I know exactly what it is that I'm doing. But yet, putting education and teaching in that professional model, some people, which may be a good thing, have kind of counted themselves out or have been screened out of the process because they're really not serious about education like that. They're not really serious about true integrity and being an example in the community in terms of being visibly righteous. And I say that to say you got some people who standing around in broken down buildings talking about they teaching and having conversations online for hours and all of this other stuff. But it's like, go do that in a boardroom. Go do that in a professional setting where now you have to show people your credentials to be able to do this, or you have to put together an actual curriculum, or you have to be able to do this or do that. Some people are not built for that type of space, but those of us who are, support us. Support us. We know what we're doing. And creating spaces like this, I've also made it easier or a segue from people who may have one foot in the streets to clean themselves up, to be able to do things and scale what it is that they have as gifts. Because there's a lot of people who have different type of gifts, but they hold themselves back a lot of times by not doing what's necessary to clean themselves up and come amongst other different people, or to put themselves in a professional space. And that's what I've been striving to do, to show people like, yo, it's not enough to just be an example and to be a pioneer or a trendsetter in a lot of ways, but you also have to make sure that you are preparing those that come behind you. I don't care what you have mastered in life, what you have mastered. Your sole job and responsibility is to help prepare the grandmaster who's coming behind you. That is your sole responsibility. Because if you're not doing that type of work, then whatever legacy that you're leading is going to eventually be buried along with you. There's a lot of people who live a life where they collect a lot of things that really become artifacts of a tomb that they're eventually buried in. I don't live that type of life, and I don't encourage that type of life for our younger people. I encourage them to find their purpose, and through that purpose, to create accomplishments or contributions to this world to bring more beauty to it, as opposed to sitting back complaining and arguing about what we see that's broken. And the unfortunate thing about it is there are many adults, and I always remind them of this. There are many adults who plan on leaving this world not giving back to anybody and not doing anything about striving to repair the things that are actually broken on their watch. They don't care about that. And the younger generation that's coming up, that's what they're going to inherit. They're going to inherit what has been broken by adults. One of the things that I'm thankful for is that I'm connected to many of you who have the same kind of mindset that I do, who are dedicated to leaving their mark in this world and living a purposeful life and making sure that we bring some more beauty to this society, as opposed to sitting back and complaining and arguing about what's broken. Most of the people that I'm connected with are people who understand that we're here for a purpose, and that many times the purpose that we're leading is beyond a human capacity, which means we're guided by a power that's greater within us than what we oftentimes see as evidenced in this society and in this world. We have to pull from a source that's greater within us that other people may not be able to recognize, identify, or acknowledge. So, yeah, I learned some things this past year, and I'm also at a place now where I'm comfortable enough to even consider and explore partnership. And that's been challenging because I've always looked at it like, yo, I got to get certain things in place in terms of security, um, in terms of being fully prepared to be able to support the vision of another being. And now I'm literally at that place where I feel comfortable enough to be able to do that. So that's also excellent. So I'm going into this new Gregorian calendar year, um, thinking about just expanding my family, which is also vitally important, you know? So one of the things that I would say that is very important for all of us to keep in mind in terms of reaching our goals is discipline and commitment. Discipline and commitment. And a lot of times people may say, like, I don't got that type of discipline and commitment or whatever. But when you look at just different aspects of your life, when you really take inventory of how your time is appropriated, you're gonna always find some element or some example of discipline and commitment. I had a person sitting here telling me that, they really don't have the discipline and the commitment and stuff, and they're drinking a cup of coffee, which they get every single day. Every single day, they find a way to get that cup of coffee. That's some discipline and commitment. And in some cases, it may even be sacrifice when you're looking at it from a financial perspective, because they might have been scraping up their last because they needed that cup of coffee, or some people who smoke. we'll always be able to find some indication or an example of discipline and commitment in our life. The goal is now, how can I transfer that discipline and commitment to something that I'm saying is important and that I want to do? One of the things that enables us to be able to do that is to be very clear, or to use specificity. Specificity is being very specific, right? So I don't say stuff like, by the summer, I'm gonna have a summer body. Now I got a summer body right now, baby. I keep I keep a summer body in the winter, right? But I don't make statements like that. I don't. Oh yeah, I'm a yeah. By the summertime, I'm gonna do this. With the way that global warming is, and people messing around with the weather and using freaking harp technology and all this other stuff, we don't know when the summer gonna come. So think about making a statement like that. Oh, when the summer come, I'm gonna do this by the summertime. You on whose watch? You don't know when that's gonna come. Which also means you don't know when, and I'm just speaking about the summer. You don't know when the summer's gonna come. You don't even know when your idea is gonna come, because you're basing it upon something that arbitrary, that people are able to manipulate. You have no control over that. Or, people would say, yeah, one day I'm gonna do this. I've never seen a calendar with the date one day on there. One day is not a date on a calendar. So what that means is it never occurs. It never happens. So specificity is vitally important. We have to be specific. If we want to have a summer body, then we need to look at a calendar and mark a specific date on that calendar when we want to have that summer body. And I would suggest that that date that you choose is before the typical summer that you have in the geographic location where you live. If your summer really kicks off, and I'm just talking about in terms of the weather, if your summer really starts kicking off like second week of May or something like that, you need to put on your calendar, or I would suggest that you put on your calendar the first week of May or the end of April, something like that. But you need to be very specific about not only the date, but be specific about what your goals are. Don't just say, oh, I want to, and even if you say, I want to have a summer body by May 20th. What does that mean? What you mean by summer body? You want your booty bigger by May 20th? You want to be more well defined? You want your abs showing? Like what specifically do you want to have as a summer body by May 20th? You have to be specific about that. The specificity itself is informing your subconscious mind to set the universe into motion for you to be able to achieve those specific goals. I remember years ago, and I learned this through experience, right? I remember years ago, I wanted, I had put it out in the universe, or I was specific, but not specific enough. I was specific about, having a partner, having a certain type of woman, and I actually wrote it out. She had to have a certain type of diet. I didn't put a bunch of stuff on there that, she got to have big breasts. Nah, nothing like that. But she had to, be considerate, qualities like that. And shit, she showed up one day. She showed up, and her ass showed out too. She showed up and showed out. And I got a lot of what I did not want because I wasn't specific enough. And I tell you, if I didn't have the will and the discipline and the commitment that I have, shit, I would have been lost in the sauce because she took me into sexual worlds that I didn't know existed. And shit, it took me years to get her ass out of my system too, because I wasn't specific enough. Like I went in, she showed up and showed out, and I had to wrestle getting out of that world like Harry Houdini. So specificity is important. Um, if we're setting goals, put it on a calendar. And here's the thing, that calendar not only puts a standard on the table, but it also literally gives you something to work towards. It's literally a goal. And here's the thing, while you're working towards that date on the calendar or towards that goal, you're going to make progress. Sometimes you may not meet that particular day, but if you don't, just set another date on the calendar. But it gives you something to actually work towards, as opposed to just being ambiguous and just saying, one day and maybe or probably or I might, or there's no sense of urgency or expectancy when we're speaking in those ambiguous terms, or we're not being specific enough. Sometimes you could even take it a step further than that by doing vision boards. You know, Years ago, one of the things that I used to do before I even got into like music production or anything like that, I used to buy magazines and learn about music production equipment. And this is before I even touched any kind of music production equipment. But I would do research and learn about it, and I would cut out pictures of the type of production equipment that I would desire. And I didn't have a whole bunch of money. I was maybe working like basic jobs and stuff like that, but I didn't have the type of financial foundation to be able to go out and buy thousands of dollars worth of equipment or whatever. But I set that intention and I made it specific, not only by what I was doing in terms of research and learning more about the world of music production and recording, but I was cutting out actual images of the type of production equipment that I wanted to get. And when I would cut out those particular pictures, I would post them in my home in places that I would have to visually see it every single day. So when I would wake up in the morning and I look around, I would be forced to see it every single day. I was feeding my subconscious. Not only would I be forced to see it soon as I woke up in the morning, but I would see it. I would post other images by my doorway so that when I leave the home, I would see it. And then when I would return home, I will also have images posted where I would see what it is that I set my intentions upon soon as I entered the home. So I was constantly reinforcing the term and idea of what it is that I wanted to make manifest. Now, we have to be very intentional about this process because we live in a society and in a world that uses the exact same procedures and the same process that I'm talking about, but for other reasons that usually don't align with our own purpose and our own goals. When you take your children into the grocery store, there's a reason that they put candy or other different products at eye level for them, or they have product placement in a certain way, not only visibly or in the physical environment, but it's also the same way that you see it online on social media. Constant product placement. In music, constant product placement, where your subconscious mind is constantly being fed with various different ideas that a lot of times don't align with your purpose. So you have to use the same kind of technology and techniques in order for you to fulfill your own purpose and to set your own goals. Because if not, then we're just simply going to be living out the purpose and the goals of everybody else that is utilizing this type of technology and these techniques. So it's important to be able to do that for ourselves. So I was doing this years ago, years ago. Eventually, I got exactly what it is that I desired. In the case of that young lady, I got what I desired and more. Shit. But that's just one part of it. Another important part of it is you really have to curate your relationships with others. You have to be very conscious about who you're investing time around and who you allow to invest time around you. If I'm not around children, the majority of the time I'm around people who are actively doing something. I don't invest a lot of time around people who just talk shit, who's running their mouth. I don't do that. Even if I'm invited in spaces or in places or to attend certain things and I see a bunch of people just talking, I log off. I leave because I'm not there for that. That's a waste of my time. So not only am I conscious of my own time and its value, I'm also conscious of other people's own time and how they value that as well, even if they don't. Meaning, if I come in contact with people, I'm thinking about what it is that I can share with people. I'm thinking about that. They may not be thinking about it. They may just be wasting their time and just shooting the shit. I still look at it like I'm not going to waste your time. Even if you're doing that, I'm not going to be here to do it with you. Because even if you don't value your time, I value your time. So I'm not even going to be here and waste your time along with you. Right? So curating your relationships means you have to really always take inventory of your time and your investment and who you are allowing to invest time with you. You have to be very conscious about that. And some people, it may be easy to just cut people off cold turkey. Other people, there may be a lot of entanglements, air quotes, entanglements with some people that it's just difficult to just cut off like that. But you have to find a way because you're really making a life and death decision. It's really a life and death situation. And sometimes we don't even really look at it through that lens. You can still hang out with people that ain't doing nothing, that ain't talking about nothing, that's always complaining. They ain't even, you will be surprised. And this is a good way, this is a good starter for some of you. Sometimes sit around and listen to how people talk and what they talk about. The average person is an expert complainer. They can point out all of the various different nuances of a problem or why some person shouldn't get certain type of credit or opportunities or why this person is doing that. And a lot of times, I mean, that's what people are constantly being fed. So a lot of times people are expert complainers and have the ability to point out all kinds of problems. Sometimes if you're sitting here and you're listening to somebody talking like that, do this. Please just do it. You ain't got to tell me what the results was because I already know what the results is going to be. But please try this. Sit back and listen to somebody, and when you hear them going down going down that road of complaining, and they're very great at it. This is the problem. They need to do this and the third. Listen to them for a second. As soon as you get an opportunity, when they take a breath and you're able to get a word in, say this. Say, so what you think we could do about that? Just say that. So what can we do about that? Now I say it that way. I say, what can we do about it? Because if you say, what are you going to do about it? That's different. That's different because now you're placing the entire responsibility on this person to be the problem solver, right? Which a lot of times people are not looking at themselves in the lens of being. The appropriate way to ask the question is you say, what are we going to do about it? Because you're offering your assistance. You're letting them also know that they're not alone, that you're also willing and able to be a part of the solution. So say that. Say, so what can we do about that? And watch how many people have never put any thought, no thought, no thought into a solution. None. Some, they're going to stop abruptly and be like, because that's the first time they even thought about being a part of the solution. Some people, they just going to keep going and not give you no type of solution because they never put thought into it. They still just going to jump right over what you asked them and still continue complaining because they never saw themselves as being a part of the solution anyway. And it's important for you to ask those questions because now you're really looking at and taking inventory of the time that you're investing amongst people and the time that you're allowing people to invest amongst you. You have goals set for yourself. And that interaction is not an investment in you reaching that goal on your calendar that you wrote down. Nothing of what you're doing right now is an investment in you getting to that particular goal that you set for yourself. None of it. Yup. Yup. Try that, original man. Say, what can we do about it? So what can we do about it? Because you're also taking the weight off of them to be the sole person that's responsible for the solution. So it's important to say it that way because the answer you're going to get is them even considering having help being a part of the solution. In very rare cases, you're going to have a person that stops and says, you know what? I didn't even think about that. Hmm. And then redirect the conversation into it being solution based. You're going to get that rare response from some people. It's very, very rare. But most people have never put no thought, have never put any thought, no thought. They haven't thought about it when it comes to how they can solve that problem. And that's primarily what you deal with people. But if you really want to invest in reaching goals, you have to be solution oriented. You have to be solution oriented. I'm not saying that you shouldn't complain about shit. Sometimes I do. I'm not saying that you shouldn't get upset or mad about certain things, but once you get out of your feelings, there comes a point where it's like, okay, what can I do to fix this? And if I personally don't have the capacity to do it, who can I reach out to who can help me fix this? And then if it's something that you personally are unable to fix and others are personally unable to help you fix, then you have to figure out how to reconcile, manage, and living with it. And that's challenging in itself as well. You know, we're all confronted by situations where it's like, damn, I got to figure out a way how to live with this. But here's the thing. When we're born into this world, we're also born into a family. Whether we know that family, whether we on good terms with that family, regardless, we're born into a family. And being born into that family, we have an opportunity to learn to manage challenging and difficult relationships that we're also going to encounter in life from people who are not family members. In other words, if we're able to deal with some hard headed ass siblings or parents and guardians or other different family members that are just difficult to get along with or were difficult, if we're able to successfully learn how to manage those type of relationships, that even though we may not get along or even though this, that, and the third, we know how to at least have some degree of civility and to have some sense of compassion and other different qualities for one another. If we're able to learn to do that with our own physical family, then we are also learning the capacity to be able to do it with others who are not physical family, others who we're gonna form families with. Because as much as we may want to say we dislike family members and everything else, that's still your family. Even if you left this earth today, they still gonna be your family. There's no way to really walk away from your family. You could act like you just excommunicated yourself from family members or whatever, or you didn't talk to them or whatever. They're still family. There's no way around that. So it's best to learn how to manage those challenging and difficult situations because you're going to encounter the same type of personalities in the form of other people with different names from different places. And if you haven't learned to manage that with your brother or your sister or your aunt, your uncle or your grandparents, how the hell is we going to be able to manage that with somebody that we have no connection to in terms of our family? Usually we don't have the skills. That's why it's important to study family dynamics. How did people manage those relationships with their family? How are they managing them right now? I had a scenario where there was someone that I knew for a while that had some challenges with their children and was not on really speaking terms with their children and stuff. And it wasn't anything like very extreme why they're not talking or whatever. And I saw that this person didn't have the humility to even be able to strive to reconcile that relationship with their own children. These are people that came from them. And I'm like, damn, like they're that prideful that they don't even want to forgive or to be respectful or to put themselves out there and to be vulnerable with their own children. And if you see people who are not even willing and able to do that with a person that literally came from them with their own children, then it would not really be intelligent to expect to receive that level of forgiveness and compassion and everything else and humility from them if they're not even willing and able to share that with their own children. It's sometimes we learn those type of lessons and we see these things after the fact, you know, or we see people that we might have been connected to. It's like they always have a problem with everybody else, and you sitting there and they constantly telling you about. And it is funny. It's kind of like a circle. You see them going around in a circle, just a problem with everybody in the circle. Everybody in the circle. There's some type of issues, and they telling you all about it. That's their problem. They doing this, that, and the third, and this, and you watching it go around in a circle. Then eventually, you turn around and you realize you in a damn circle too. And it's your turn. Now it's your turn to be talked about and to be that person. And usually when that happens, you're blindsided because you don't realize that you're also in that circle. But pay attention when you see people who do that, who are having this conversation about everybody being a problem in the circle. It's somebody that's doing something wrong or doing something. Because as they continuously go around, eventually it's going to be your turn. And when it happens, you're usually going to be blindsided because you don't expect them to, like, what, me? Me too? So these are some of the things that can impede our progress. But regardless, people who do things like that, our inability to manage difficult relationships, um, discipline, commitment, all of these various different things that we encounter along our journey, these are all things that when we sit down and we decompress and we consider that these are our decisions, we won't allow those things to be able to sidetrack us or undermine or impede our progress of getting where it is that we say we wanted to go. And it may take some time. Some people may throw you some curveballs or do various different things, but at the end of the day, you still have to take responsibility and say, I'm never going to allow some people to have the power over my life to determine my destiny. And that's one way that I do it sometimes. Like, I've had situations where, people were having conversations with me and they were telling me the reason that they didn't do certain things or to get certain places or achieve certain goals is because somebody's fault or somebody did this and somebody did that. Now, people can play a role as a supporting actor in your movie, right? You're the leading actor. Not only that, you're the director, the producer, and you're the writer. You never step outside of being that. But yeah, you may have some supporting cast members and extras in your movie who can create some disruption on the set. You acknowledge that. But don't ever give an extra the credit or the responsibility of being the leading actor, the writer, the director, the producer of your film. So I would do it like this. Sometimes I was having conversations with people and they telling me about how this person did this, did that, and the third. And I sit there and I listen. And then when I do have a chance to talk, I say, wow, I didn't know that they had that much power over your life. I say that, or I say, hey, wow, I didn't know that you gave them that much power over over your decisions. And yo, when I say that, they immediately recognize what they're doing. Now, I ain't never let nobody. That's kind of like what it sounds like, though. Wow, I didn't know they had that much power over your life because that's essentially what you're doing. You're giving someone the authority and the power to determine your destiny. And again, it doesn't mean that you don't acknowledge the shit that people do. Yeah, you do. But you also acknowledge I'm I'm not going to put myself in a position like that again to give somebody the power or the authority to disrupt what I'm doing. That person. And that's important to be specific because some people may go through these experiences and they make that statement. I'm never going to give somebody, and then they make a blanket statement and they're not specific enough. Instead of saying, I'm never going to let nobody have that type of power, this, that, and the third to control, it's more specific to say, I'm not going to allow a person or allow this person to have that position in my life again. I'm not going to do that. You know? Peace, Powerborn. So, yeah, so at the end of the day, I mean, we experience failure, we experience trials and tribulations, but we also experience triumph. And we have to be honest about all of those various different experiences. And in going through those various different experiences, to always acknowledge the fact that at the end of the day, we determine what we do and how we choose to respond to life situations. So, Power Born, um, you can put them on Pluto. You could always be honest and acknowledge that they always been Pluto, but you've been looking at them like they was Mercury, or looking at them like they was the Earth. We can do that too, and be honest about it. You know what I'm saying? And that type of honesty is also paired with humility. Oh yeah, I'm building. That type of honesty is paired with humility. And here's the thing, like there's power in vulnerability. There's power in vulnerability. You know, as especially as males and as men, we have to be strong enough to be gentle. Strong enough to be gentle. And a lot of times we go through things where the path of vulnerability is really the path of freedom. True indeed, Joy. It's freedom in that. And here's another thing, that vulnerability and that freedom is also the key to emotional security. And what do I mean by that? I was having a bill with one of my sisters the other day, and I was telling her that next week I'm going to be 48 years old. And I was telling her that there's only been two instances that I could remember of being with a woman and truly feeling a sense of intimacy where they felt safe in my arms. It wasn't nothing that they just simply said or told me or anything like that, but I literally felt them relinquish insecurities, fear, and just simply be vulnerable in my arms, trusting that I had them. And when I say had them, that they were protected and that they were in a secure, safe space. I've had experiences with women, and there's some women I never felt their ability to trust that. Not simply because I was out here doing something, or it could have been maybe they felt as if I wasn't in a stable place. A lot of it had to do with their own personal experiences and never really feeling safe and in a space where they were protected. And one thing that I realized is they were able to not only feel safe and protected because of my perspective and my integrity as a person, but also because of my vulnerability and my willingness to be able to share when I felt hurt about something, when I was disappointed about something, for them to see me actually cry about something. I say that to say, if we are not sharing that level of vulnerability or intimacy with the partner, why should we expect or feel that our partner should share that vulnerability with us? Ultimately, they know on a very intimate level that they're not safe in our space if we're not safe in our own space. If we're not vulnerable enough or open enough to be ourselves and to trust them with that vulnerability or with those feelings, why would they reciprocate that? Why would they feel the ability to be that way? So I realized that, like, over the years, that damn, like, they literally felt as though they would not be harmed and that they were protected and they were safe in my arms. It wasn't sexual. It wasn't anything like that. But it was just a confidence and a trustworthiness in who I was and who I am. But in order for that to take place, I myself had to be open and vulnerable enough to be the same way with them. So we have to be strong enough to be gentle. And here's the thing, we oftentimes see it in a parent child dynamic. When you see a father with a child or you see a mother with a child, you oftentimes see that vulnerability and that openness in a parent child dynamic. The challenge is, how can we demonstrate that in an adult to adult dynamic, where as adults, we can be just as vulnerable with each other. We can have that much unconditional love for one another as adults. People don't even think about not being like that with their own child. Your child could go through a lot of different things, but you still demonstrate that unconditional love for your child. Or you may see your child accomplish something and you cry out of joy. You don't hide that. Or your children see you go through various different type of things. Being open and vulnerable in that capacity as a parent-child dynamic. The challenge is, how can we be that way as adults now and have that same unconditional love for adults? It takes work. It takes work. But in that work is a dimension of love that a lot of times we only really experience or see through our children. You know? And some of us have had experiences where we've seen the worst. Yeah, protecting our heart. It's funny. It's like we could be butt naked with people. We can be, I mean, completely naked with people, but our heart ain't naked. You know what I'm saying? Um, some of us have gone through experiences where we've seen the worst of human condition. It's difficult for us to develop that sense of trust and confidence in other human beings. But here's Here's the thing. There is no theoretical way to do it. Like I'm having all of this conversation right now, right? It sounds good. It sounds good. It sounds applicable. But the real test of everything that I'm saying is being in a partnership and putting that shit to the test and living it out. I could talk about trust and being vulnerable and everything else. Okay, now I'm in the situation. Okay, be vulnerable, Saladin. That's the only way to really prove it is by showing it in real time. The only way to learn trust is to trust. The only way to be vulnerable is to be vulnerable. We got to do it. So all of these things play a role in where it is that we striving to go. For years, I would be on my path and my journey in life, and there would be times where I would get off of my path and go entertain somebody. And thankfully, I wouldn't be so wrapped up in situations or scenarios off of my path that I wouldn't be able to get back to the road that I was traveling on. But it definitely taught me in my experience that, I'm going to just have to meet people along my path and on my road. I'm not detouring. I'm not going over here, going over there. My path is wide. So if I meet people along this path, hey, we met going in the same direction. I'm not meeting people going backwards. I'm not seeing people going in this direction or that direction. Hey, that's cool for them. That may work for them, but I'm not going in that direction. And I'm just saying that as a person that lives according to vision, that has mapped things out. My Atlantis School for Gifted Youngsters that I share about, this is something that I've mapped out years in advance. So I clearly know exactly what it is that I'm doing. I get input and advice from various different people who are lords of their particular worlds. Yet I have a vision and it is clear. And I can tell you what I plan to be doing 5 years from now, what I plan to be doing 10 years from now. Yeah. And here's the thing, Powerborn, in terms of communicating and protecting our feelings. As males and as men, we grow up in a stereotypical male or man box in this society where we're taught to disregard and don't acknowledge our feelings at all. Even in the 5%, we got a whole bunch of phrases that don't encourage us to recognize that it is through knowledge, wisdom, understanding, culture, power, and equality that we acknowledge our divinity, that we go through those various different phases and processes. And some of that process is experience and recognizing our feelings. So I say that to say we grow up in a society where there's a stereotypical male or man box, and we're taught don't cry, man up, don't feel that way, push your feelings aside, all of this other different stuff, to the point where as we grow up, we have a very unsophisticated understanding of emotions and feelings. It wasn't until recently where if I'm asked to draw a bunch of different emojis of feelings, I can draw a happy face, I can draw a mad face, I can draw a sad face, But if we getting into some of these nuances or fine mist that the naked eye can hardly detect, such as anxiety, um, anguish, rage, jealousy, envy. If we have to describe all of those various different nuances of emotions and feelings, a lot of us as males and as men, we have never been taught to be able to distinguish or identify those many different layers of currents. Because we grow up in a society where we're taught to not acknowledge any of that shit. Be a man. Don't cry. So, in terms of emotional intelligence, a lot of us are very not evolved. Well, we don't acknowledge certain things, which means we may see our partner or some of our family members expressing an emotion and we think that it's anger. That shit ain't anger. That's depression. This person is depressed. It may look like it's anger, but that's not anger. So think about in close proximity, especially with women, how a lot of times we as males or as men can misread a lot of various different things. We may think that her body language and what she's displaying is she's with it or that she likes us. All of the other women around him is like, nah, she do not like him at all. But we are looking at something entirely different because we're not sophisticated enough or emotionally intelligent enough to know those various different nuances of expression. We've never been taught that. We've never been taught that. We've been taught to bury our emotions. We ain't got no emotions. We don't acknowledge that. While the whole time we live in a world that's based in six, where everything around us is based upon decorum and feelings and emotions. And we live in a world that has an atmosphere and weather. The same way that this planet, which is likened to a woman, has an emotional atmosphere, the woman has an emotional atmosphere and weather. In the same way that she is the master of that realm, many of us have this mindset that we rose above this. No, 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 no. We're not in tune or we're not emotionally intelligent enough to know what's going on in this realm of six. That's why we misread shit so much. There are clear distinctions between a person that if you look at them, you can see whether that's envy or jealousy. These are things we have to learn. A woman can tell you the distinction. And part of it is because she's born in the physical vehicle of a being who has a capacity to manage various streams of emotion simultaneously. What do I mean by that? As males and as men, we don't physically give birth to another life form. We don't have that physiological capacity. We're not born that way. Women, whether they choose to have a child or not, are born with the physiological capacity to be able to potentially manage more than one stream of emotion simultaneously. Think about a woman who is pregnant with twins, for example. A woman who is pregnant with twins is simultaneously managing in that physical form, that physical vessel. She is simultaneously managing three streams of emotions at once. Three streams in that one physical vehicle. She's born with that capacity. That's a very, very, very sophisticated level of intelligence emotionally. That's a high level of emotional intelligence to be able to do that. And it doesn't mean that a woman has to be able to do that in order to have access to that emotional intelligence. She's born in the form with that capacity. So that high level of emotional intelligence is something that's inherent to her. When we talk about many different layers of current, some real cold and warm, others very swift and changeable, when we are referring to the atmosphere or the weather of this physical planet, on an emotional level, physiologically, a woman is managing those various different streams of emotions, just like different currents of air. And many of those currents of air are fine mist that the naked eye can hardly detect, that everyday women are able to see. That's why I make sure that I have strong, consistent relationships with women. I don't hang around a bunch of dudes. No, I have cousins and I have comrades and colleagues, but I keep close relationships with women because this is the earth. The earth is the woman's twin, and women more than anybody know how to navigate this planet. That has been a custom and a tradition that we've learned since classical times, since our indigenous societies, even to this day, that a lot of us who have become other than ourselves don't want to acknowledge. And because of that, there's a lot of things that we're failing in, a lot of things that we are falling short in. That's why when I see a lot of these conversations online about, this battle with the sexist stuff and women is doing this and, this is attack, all of that shit, I'm looking at it from an outsider perspective. Like, damn, y'all having all of them problems? I don't know shit about that. Yeah, women is doing that and they trying to, you know, challenge the authority of the male and all this other shit. I'm like, those the kind of women that you know? I never feel uncomfortable or threatened about a woman's status or her ability or anything like that. Go on, girl. That's why I love Beyonce. I like to see that. But dudes, that's always, yeah, women this, that, and the third, and women need to do that. Like, you're having that many, if you're having that much difficulty with women, just go get a goddamn man. Just get a man. Because some of this stuff I be seeing and the way people be talking, I'm like, yo, you sound like you kind of like hate women. Because I don't have those kind of problems and issues. I never had those kind of problems and issues. Part of it is because I had the privilege of seeing the dynamic between my father and my mother. My mother was the oracle on the Matrix. My mother was the Cicely Tyson. My mother was this archetype that we see oftentimes today of a lot of women. I've been prepared for this. Not only have I been prepared for this, but I've been prepared to honor what it is that I see. None of this shit don't threaten me. Oh, it's an attack on the black male. And I don't have no problems like that. They trying to take the black male out of the family and it's a conspiracy, this and the third. Y'all having them problems? That's the problems y'all having? Because to me, a lot of us are not seen in the proper light because we haven't stepped into the proper light. A lot of us have not demonstrated the integrity and the fortitude and the constitution that's necessary for women to be able to respect and to honor. Yeah, you have some women who have been so hurt that they don't care who it is. If you got a penis, they don't like you. So you have some women that have that kind of issue. Whatever that issue is, that's the issue that they have. As males and as men, we have to focus on what it is that we need to do in terms of being men of integrity. Do women trust you around their children? Do they trust you around their family? Do they trust you with money? Do they trust your word? Do they feel confident and secure in you following through with what it is that you're saying that you're going to do? Do they trust that you're not going to take advantage of them when they're in a vulnerable situation? These are things that internally we have to work on. And the only way to do that is to do it. We have to have those type of relationships with women where there are situations and scenarios where they are in a vulnerable situation. And through that experience, they saw that we didn't take advantage of them and that we protected them. Or if they were in need or in other different situations or scenarios related to their family or whatever, that we were there. We have to be able to do that consistently for them to be able to have that trust and confidence in who we actually are. Not because we need to prove shit to them, but because that is who you are. Especially if you're striving for perfection and you see the greatest in yourself and you're adhering to a standard of divinity, regardless of what somebody thinks, you still gonna be that person. Regardless of who they are, you still ain't gonna take advantage of nobody, and you're not gonna allow somebody on your watch or in your presence take advantage of somebody. We have to be that type of person. So we're living in a society right now where we're required to step up. The standards and the expectations of us are much higher. Some of it is unrealistic. If it's just coming from like a financial perspective, you need to have this much money, whatever. I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about standards or expectations when it comes to character, qualities, and principles and values that we live by. If we're already that person, what's the problem? So I've been prepared for the type of era that we exist in right now. I had the privilege and the honor of being able to see how my parents interacted, and my mother was the type of women that I see today. So in all of what I'm saying, it's really about putting the work in and truly being invested in what it is that we say that we want or say that we're about. Because one thing that I've learned over the years is everybody got something to say. Everybody got something to talk about. Everybody's an expert or they're this philosopher or they have this type of perspective, and usually their life don't line up to that. You don't see me on here having a whole bunch of conversation about women and relationships and everything like that because I'm not in a relationship. I share some things here or there, especially about past situations and circumstances, but I'm not having a bunch of conversation about that. I tell you all about community development. I tell you all about youth outreach or publishing books or filming in the documentary world, or I could tell you about a lot of different things, but I'm gonna talk to you about what it is that I'm actually doing and what I have done. And I'm gonna tell you about things that I've learned in that experience as well. I don't put on no airs. But I think about this sometimes, like living a purposeful life and crafting your purpose into contributions or accomplishments, crafting it into that. You're literally creating a legacy. So, in other words, we can be gifted in various different areas of life, and that's cool. But the goal is to take that personal growth and development and to make it interpersonal, to connect it to other people. And the way that you connect it to other people is you craft it into contributions and accomplishments. In other words, if you writing a whole bunch of long posts on social media and stuff, hey, that's cool. I mean, make that into a book or something. Make it into an actual object, something tangible that represents the part of your legacy. Because here's the thing, when you're living a purposeful life and you're crafting that purpose into contributions and accomplishments, when you're literally creating a legacy, you're also literally touching immortality. What do I mean by touching immortality? A lot of people fear death. And because of the life that they're living, they can see the finality of death. They can see how once they're no longer here that it's over. And that's fearful for a lot of people because they're not living in their purpose. When you're living in your purpose and you're crafting that purpose into a contribution or into an accomplishment, you're creating something with that purpose and you're leaving it here. You've actually touched immortality because you literally can't die. What you created is going to physically outlive you. So your perspective of life and death becomes very different than the average person. I'm able to speak with such intention, with a lack of doubt, because I've literally done this. If I was to die tonight, there are still 23 books that I've literally written that are going to be in this world, that are going to exist beyond this physical form. No one can stop that. I've literally touched immortality. Any other contribution or accomplishment that I've created through my purpose is going to outlive me. I cannot die. And I know that for a fact. Some people have not lived a life or experienced enough where they realize that they cannot die. So they can't speak with that same degree of certainty and confidence. I can. So I'm also not operating from a place of fear or insecurity. Certain things that people say and do that don't matter to me. I've outlived myself already many times, and there's nothing they can do about that. So living in our purpose gives us an ability to craft contributions and accomplishments that outlive our physical form. Being in a creative space and doing things that add beauty to this world, literally, not just sitting here talking, not just running our mouths, but literally doing something, allows us to touch immortality. It allows us to come face to face with what we believed death to be. I've already outlived many different things. So I will be here beyond this physical form. I know that for a fact. Not because I believe it, not because, no, I've literally created the means for me to outlive this form. I've literally done that many times. So I don't operate from a place of fear or insecurity. I've died many times already. But you do that by living in your purpose. If you're living a mediocre life and you're just going to work every day and you're not really doing anything, that is oftentimes where depression comes from because you're not tapped into your purpose. You literally don't feel as if you need to exist because you're not doing anything to add or to contribute to existence. That's the importance of investing in the arts. That's the importance of why I've established the Atlantis School for Gifted Youngsters, to teach this to young at a very early age, to set them on that trajectory of having a purpose in life. So they realize that greater is the power that's in you than this form that's in this world. The only way that you could outlive this form is if you have to have the ability to craft contributions and accomplishments from your purpose. I create music, I produce music. I don't do it because, oh, I want to see how many streams I got. Because I want to make a whole bunch of music so I could sell, and oh, I don't give a fuck about nothing like that. That is a part of my creative process that I put into this world that is literally going to outlive me. No, I don't practice yoga on a consistent basis, but I have a yoga program that I teach children. You have to live in your purpose, and your purpose isn't one thing. That's why I'm always involved in a lot of various different things. I'm always involved in a lot of different things because I'm always striving to find what way can I stretch my capacity? What can I learn new? How can I grow? How can I learn this well enough to teach it to somebody else? How can I craft this into a contribution and an accomplishment that will outlive me? That is how I move. So a lot of the things that I see and the conversations that I see people having, that shit is foreign to me. Gossiping about what this person is doing and what that person is saying, and how they gonna get this and that. That shit is so far beneath me that I'm looking at that like, yo, that's where people are at. That's what's occupying their consciousness. That's the world that they exist in. Mm-mm. And that's the world that they're teaching the younger generation. Mm-mm. So a part of this is also being able to take inventory of your time, like I mentioned earlier about valuing your time and then valuing the time of other people. You have to really look at your time and say, yo, do I want to hang around this person, or what am I an asset to this person? Are they an asset to me? Or am I a liability to them? Are they a liability to me? What do you say to people that struggle with finding that meaning in themselves if they live in a world where they are always deterred? Excellent question. Um, One way that you can do it is to explore. And what do I mean by explore? To be courageous enough to try things out. Try a food that within your dietary um, perspective, try a food that you've never really tried before. Watch a movie that you never watched before, or a genre that you never really checked out before. Go someplace that you never went before. Read some books that's a subject that you never really was into before. Listen to different genres of music. You have to open your mind up to the various different possibilities, because some of those paths that you open your mind to may be a path of purpose, but you would never know it if you didn't if you weren't courageous enough to explore. So you have to be courageous enough to explore, to learn different things outside of where you're at. And then also be true to, like Original Man said, investigating. Be true to doing some self-diagnostic work, to really sit and think about, like, what are some of your interests? What's some things that you like? What's some things that you dislike, and why? Because once you go down that rabbit hole, you may realize that, yo, the reason I dislike this, the reason I dislike carrots is because when I was 5 years old, I had a traumatic experience with a damn rabbit that I made a decision at 5 years old that I don't want to have any kind of association with anything that has to do with a rabbit, which includes carrots. In our journey, we've made a lot of promises about certain things that really have no logical or rational basis. It may have just been an emotional imprint of an experience that we've had, and everything in terms of a sensory perspective we associate with that experience. So we might have had a messed up experience. you don't you, you don't like yogurt because you dreamed it was chasing you. See, that's what I'm talking about. When we have experiences, that becomes a sensory imprint on our consciousness, right? So, for example, like, we may have seen something horrible happen, seen it happen, but yet that experience of seeing something happen also was a sensory snapshot, which means we might have smelt something at that exact same time that that experience happened that we were not consciously aware of, or heard something at that time, or felt something, or maybe even tasted something prior to that, or immediately after that experience. So that sensory snapshot that took place based upon that experience is something that we also may carry with us. So we may not realize that this is the reason that we just don't like that scent. Like, I hate that scent. But that could go all the way back to an experience that we had where we had the same scent when something actually happened. Damn. Joy. So then next time we see each other, we're gonna have to go to a yogurt bar. A frozen yogurt bar. Oh man. So yeah, so going down that rabbit hole of taking inventory or doing like a self-diagnostic, we may learn some interesting things about ourselves. Why we don't like hearing no, or why we always be saying yes to things, or why it's easy for us to be put on a guilt trip and other people know it. Like, you know? So when we say knowledge of self, that's what it ultimately is. It's a never-ending inner journey. It's a journey of self-discovery, but also an exploratory journey where we're learning new things about ourselves. Shit, go ice skating or something. That might be the furthest thing from your mind, but try that. Try roller skating if you never did that. Those various different exploratory paths, you may find aspects of your purpose. But again, you have to do something. You have to do something. All of these various different things that I'm talking about are things that I've consistently done over the years. And I consistently encourage other people to do, especially going into 2023. Because reaching our goals are important, not just for our own personal gratification, but so that we can be of a greater resource and service to other people. Because living our purpose is good for not only society, but for this world. Because we're literally invested in bringing more beauty to this world as opposed to just sitting back, critiquing and criticizing and analyzing and talking about the problems or what we see, what's broken. We're actively involved in being a solutionary. I had to learn what an issue was with rejection and connected it with being in foster home as a kid. It was eye opening because I was a mess. Damn. Mm. You know? So I've been on here for a minute, y'all. I usually strive to get on here for about an hour, but I got into it. So we're approaching on 2 hours now. So y'all got any questions before I get up out of here? Do you have any questions for me? And I I will do my best to answer the questions. You know what? I'm gonna go to my in the chat. I'm also gonna put Atlantis School. Yeah, I put my atlantischool.blogspot link. So if you click on that, you could go to my website, and that's where I have the article where I talk about 9 ways to master 2023. And if you ever have other different questions, you could always email me. Yeah, that's my email, atlantisbuild@gmail.com. And like I said, y'all, whatever I said tonight, it don't mean shit if I'm not living that out and I don't have examples of what it is that I'm talking about. How can we do better with gaining more clarity, not just amongst ourselves, but with our people as a whole? You will have to be more specific, Kareem. Clarity in regards to what? Clarity with our people as a whole. Yeah, you got to be more specific about that. What do you mean by clarity with our own people as a whole? Do you mean seeing our whole people? Seeing our people as a whole, and then if you're saying that, like, what do you mean by what do you want to see, or what are you striving to see, or what do you think you need to be seeing? Hmm. Let me see if I could understand your question better. You said with our identity. How can we do better with gaining more clarity with our people, with our people's identity? I'm not sure where you're going with this. Uh, Peace, Aboriginal man. um, yeah, I'm not sure. You have to be more clear, Kareem, with what you're asking me, because I don't want to assume. There are people that are lost individually and collectively. Oh, are you asking how can we assist people? Or are you asking I'm not sure what you're asking because yeah, some of our people are lost. Understanding each other as humans or relatability. How do we see clarity for ourselves? Oh, okay. Now, that is something that belongs to you solely. You can only see clarity for yourself because I mean, not only physically is it your eyes, but it's also your mind. Even if you want to look at your mind as being symbolic as a third eye, it's yours. And I think that's one thing to keep in mind, that clarity is yours, your understanding. It's what you are seeing. And in you taking responsibility and acknowledging that it is what you see, you also have to respect and I don't say tolerate, I say respect that other people have their own journey of growth and development, no matter where they're at. And that's not just people out on the street. I'm talking about your own family. Even if you have physical children, you have to respect the fact that they have their own journey of growth and development and that they don't get understanding just because they're in proximity to you. How many times have you been standing literally next to somebody and you're pointing at something and saying, see that right there? They're literally standing right next to you and they cannot see what you're striving to point to because that's your understanding. It's what you actually see. You can give people a lot of details. You can give people a lot of input and you can break it down. You can do whatever you want to help them get an understanding, but it's theirs ultimately. And you have to respect the fact that people have their own journey. See, understanding in our mathematics represents the number three. But prior to you getting to understanding, you have to have knowledge and wisdom. A person has to have their own knowledge, or they have to know or be aware of things for themselves and also have their own experience in order to arrive at that understanding. So, are we not able to achieve clarity and understanding as a whole? I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in order for us to get to that place of having a consensus and being whole, we have to be able to respect each one's journey and path in order to get there, or we not going to be together. What do I mean by that? How many times have we seen a group of people get together and there's one person with the idea, or that there's a hierarchy structure and they're saying what everything needs to be and they're telling you their vision and everything else, but everybody else, they just going along with it. That's not a consensus and it's not equality. That's not really everybody at the table and it's not a cipher. See, the beauty of a circle or a cipher is that if we're all standing in a cipher, in a cipher, no one has a dominant perspective. Everyone has an equal vantage point of view in a circle or in a cipher. If there's a hierarchy, everybody doesn't have an equal perspective or view or input. If you have a school setting, you have the class in one place, and then you have the person in front of the class. Everyone doesn't have the same vantage point of view. A cipher enables people to have an equal vantage point of view. It represents equality. So I say, in order to arrive at that point, the how people arrive at that cipher has to be honored and respected. A person's journey and a path has to be honored and respected. So in order to have a collective clarity, we have to be able to see each other. And if people are not being seen and honored and respected, then you're not going to have any kind of collective work and responsibility. You're not going to have cooperation because everyone is not being seen and everyone is not being respected in terms of what their input is. So when I say clarity or understanding, we have to respect our journey, but we also have to respect the fact that people have their own journey in order to get to their place of growth and development. And we can't even put our own standard of growth and development on them. That's something that we also have to honor. Those of us who came into Christian church, we often had a prayer where we talked about not being led into temptation and then not trespassing against each other. That's also what I'm talking about, like not trespassing against people when it comes to their own growth and development and their journey of understanding. So that's a very difficult thing to be able to do. It's very difficult to be able to do. To be able to see the best in somebody and the best for somebody, but to respect the fact that they have to be able to see that for themselves and that there's nothing that you can do to force them to be able to get that understanding for themselves. They have to grow into seeing the value in themselves. There's nothing that you can force them to do in order to get that. You can help foster an environment. You can encourage people. You can inspire or support people from the external, but knowledge itself is an internal process. It's a never ending inner journey. A person has to be self motivated in order to get to where it is that they're striving to go. Yep, true indeed, knowledge in their own good time. And in saying that, it's also respecting and honoring the fact that own is the key word. It's their own time. So we may have a different perspective of what a good time is and the work that a person is putting in, but we also have to respect the fact that hey, that's their own good time. So it's a very delicate, it's a relationship and it's very delicate. You have to know when to share and when not to share. But in order to get to that collective body, people got to be seen and respected and feel comfortable and vulnerable enough to be in that cipher. But a person won't even get into that cipher if their journey to get there is not honored and respected and they don't feel safe and they don't feel that others who are in that cipher are safe or are being vulnerable or are being genuine and honest about who they are. You're just going to have a whole bunch of people standing around in a cipher or in a circle or coming together that are there for the purpose of a pissing contest or putting on airs or trying to one up each other or doing all of this other bullshit that originates in an ego. It's not really to come together to do the work. But in order for that to take place, you have to demonstrate that. So I know that was a long response to your question, but personal growth and development ultimately is connected to interpersonal growth and development. The work that we do within ourselves sets the stage for the work that we're able to successfully do by being of service to other people. And the more successful we are at doing that inner work, we eventually create more opportunities to connect with others who are invested in that type of inner work. And that is how you begin to build that collective body or that cipher of people who are advocating for the same common cause. But it ultimately starts with us and simultaneously respecting the fact that it starts with other people as well, no matter how close they are to us physically, because everybody has their own journey. And no matter what you want for somebody else or how bad you want it for somebody else, they got to want it for themselves. And that's something that you do not have the capacity to give to somebody because it's coming from the outside. The only way that it can happen is from the inside. And that's a difficult lesson to consistently remind ourselves of and learn. because we can have the best advice and intentions and opportunities for people in the world. But if they don't step into it, if they don't utilize it, it means nothing. And here's another thing: we also have to respect the fact and accept that it doesn't mean anything to somebody else. Because sometimes we can become so attached or egocentric that we think and believe and feel that a person is out of their mind, or they should have accepted what we had as an opportunity, or they should have did this, or they should have did that. We may think that just because we have it, that it is of the ultimate value, and it is to us. And it could be argued that it could be good for other people as well. But when we're confronted by the reality that a person doesn't see anything in that, we also have to acknowledge that. You may think Beyonce is the best thing since sliced bread, but somebody else may be like, "Oh, I don't like her." Instead of arguing and going through her discography and explaining this, that, and the third, instead of doing all of that, the mature thing and the evolved thing to do is to just shrug and be like, "Oh, okay, yeah. Shit, they don't like Beyonce." But a lot of us, it's hard for us to do that, especially when it's things that's just personal to us. We think that everybody needs to value it the same way. Yep, and that's ego, Joy. If we like this, and we feel hurt when somebody yucks our yum. We be hurt when somebody yuck our yum. But when we learn that lesson, things become so much easier. When we realize that everybody ain't gotta like mayonnaise on a sandwich. And they may, "Bleh, I can't stand mayonnaise." That's cool. I don't like mustard. I ain't saying that personally, but I'm just saying it's the same thing. The Muslims say, "Can you be your way and to me be my way?" Yes, some of them do. Yeah. But yeah, I've been on here for a minute, y'all. I'm about to really get off now. But I appreciate y'all tuning in for a minute. And willfully, some things that I shared that could be of value to you, because I ain't get on here and waste my damn time. But I definitely will that you have a positive and progressive and productive entrance into this new Gregorian calendar year. Like I'll be coming out of it. Like I said earlier, whether people say that January 1st is the new year, or they arguing saying it's March 20th because that's the spring. I don't care what people saying. I just care what you're doing for 365 days. That's what's important to me. And regardless of 365 days, I'm always moving. I'm always doing something. Always. It don't matter. So yeah. So I'll build with y'all again soon. And I appreciate again y'all just tuning in for a minute. And peace.